We now continue with session 2, the ethics of responsibility. As we mentioned before, the moral crisis of our age is not ignorance, it is indifference. We know more than any generation before us, yet we act with less conviction. Information multiplies while wisdom thins. Responsibility, once sacred, is now diluted by systems so vast that no one feels accountable. We live in a world of shared power and diffused guilt, where everyone contributes to harm, but no one admits to it. To recover moral order, we must first recover responsibility, not as burden, but as dignity. To be human is to be answerable. Every tradition describes existence as a trust. The Quran speaks of a responsibility that the mountains refused to bear, but mankind accepted. The trust was never dominion, it was moral agency. The capacity to choose, to act, and the capacity to face the consequence. Because freedom without responsibility is not liberation, it is chaos. True freedom is not the power to do anything we wish, but the discipline to do what is right. In our globalized world, cause and effect have grown invisible. A click on a screen can hurt a stranger thousands of miles away. A purchase can sustain exploitation. A silence can become complicity. The distance weakens conscience. As sociologist Bowman observed, when everyone is responsible, no one feels responsible. There is no control. And yet, the essence of morality begins exactly where control ends. To act ethically is not to command the world, it is to care about the world. It is to know that even the smallest deed, the quietest word, ripples outward into the moral fabric of life. Religious ethics remind us that intention is the soul of action. In Islam, every deed begins with niyyah, sincerity of purpose. Actions are judged not only by their results, but by the heart that moves them. As the Quran says, whoever does an atom's weight of good will see it, and whoever does an atom's weight of evil will see it. No act is lost, no intention is unseen. Responsibility is the bridge between knowledge and wisdom, between freedom and faith. Every civilization that endured understood this truth. Greatness is not measured by what it controls, but what it protects. Science and governance may extend humanity's reach, but only ethics can justify it. And so, the renewal of moral orders begin not in institutions, but within the self, in the quiet revolution of intention and conscience. As the Quran reminds us, God does not change the condition of people until they change what is within themselves. The story of civilization is also the story of pride and its correction. Every rise in knowledge or power has carried within it the seeds of arrogance, and every empire that imagined it could master the world without moral conscience eventually learned otherwise. If the centuries behind us were an ascent toward control, then the century ahead must be a return to humility, not as weakness, but as wisdom. Humility is not the denial of greatness, it is the awareness of its source and its limits. In ancient philosophy, humility stood between arrogance and despair, as balanced ground that kept knowledge from turning into vanity. In the language of revelation, it is the foundation of faith itself, to walk gently upon the earth, aware that life is a gift, not a conquest. The Quran describes the faithful as those who wake humbly upon the earth, and the Gospel teaches, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." Both traditions remind us humility is not smallness, it is truthfulness and honest recognition of our place in this vast creation. But in our age, humility has been replaced by confidence without conscience. We assert before we understand. We consume before we reflect. We confuse noise for knowledge, visibility for value, and power for purpose. Without humility, knowledge hardens into arrogance and civilization into empires. Science and technology have freed us from many superstitions, but they have also tempted us to forget our limits. We map galaxies, we split atoms, and rewrite the code of life, and begin to imagine that understanding the world means owning it. The deeper we look into reality, the more we rediscover our smallness within it. Humility is not the enemy of science, it is its fulfillment. It is the realization that comprehension is not command, and that wonder is not ignorance. Without humility, meaning collapses. We gain speed, but we lose direction. We gather wealth, but erode wonder. Pleasure becomes a substitute for peace, and stimulation becomes a shadow of joy. To recognize limits is not to shrink freedom, but to define it. A river flows between its banks. A life flourishes because it has boundaries. The moral laws revealed by faith, honesty, compassion, moderation are not chains. They are channels through which human potential can flow safely like the water flows between the banks. As the Quran reminds, He has set the balance so that you do not transgress within the balance. Harmony depends on proportion, and proportion depends on humility. Humility restores the relationship between reason and revelation, between creation and the Creator. It allows knowledge to return to its sacred purpose, not to dominate, but to understand. Humility is the birthplace of meaning. It reconnects humanity to the sacred rhythm of existence. It teaches that reverence is the first step toward wisdom. The 21st century is armed with power, yet haunted by emptiness. We must remember the oldest truth, that the greatest strength is not to conquer the earth, but to walk gently upon it. For only when humanity kneels before truth can it finally stand upright. Thank you for listening, and we will continue later in another session.